And we are live. What's up, everybody? This is Mike Sims from Let's Be Blunt. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I have a very special guest joining us. I met her a couple weeks back. I think sometimes things happen as they're supposed to, and the universe brings you the right people at the right moments. But we have with us today Dr. Andrea Holmes. I hope I didn't butcher that too bad.
No.
She is coming to us from Nebraska. She has a great background. I'll let her tell it here in a second. But ultimately, she's going through a lot of what a lot of us are going through in the hemp industry. Lack of regulation, subpar testing, and overzealous police departments that don't fully understand the laws. So, I'll give that brief introduction. With that being said, thank you, Doctor, for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. There's a little bit of freeze there. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what brings you to this podcast, and some of your expertise, and what got you to where you are today.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to talk about myself. I'm a
Absolutely.
professor in Nebraska, chemistry professor. Organic chemistry is my specialty, and I have done many, many, many years of research and worked with students and postdocs and other professors. And then one day in my long career, I recognized that I became increasingly bored with my research, which then made me recognize that I should be starting to enter a new field that's emerging, that's exciting, that has a lot of science that still needs to be uncovered. And so I applied for sabbatical leave from my university and went to Denver, Colorado, and the complete deep dive into the cannabis industry. I started doing research at marijuana testing facilities. Then I transitioned into the hemp industry where I built a company called um, Precision Plant Molecules, which is a company that was focused on minor cannabinoids derived from hemp. And then I went back after my sabbatical leave was done. I went back to Nebraska and I started a cannabis program at the university. And that cannabis program is a worldwide program that launched on a certificate type of platform. And then we also built for credit courses. Um, in Nebraska, because that's my home base, so to say, I'm very interested in the hemp industry because Nebraska doesn't have any recreational or medical marijuana. We're one of the very few states in the US that has basically nothing. So the only thing that Nebraska has is hemp and hemp derived products. So I'm very interested in this industry, this flourishing industry, and really this industry that helps people. And right now, that's the only thing that we have in Nebraska. And so I want to make sure that people um, have good access to hemp derived products, that these products are compliant, that these products are safe, that they are tested adequately, and that they go into a really a professional setting so that people can consume them safely and don't have to worry about inhaling things that might not be very healthy or eating things that might cause different adverse side effects. And so that's my passion, to really help the Nebraskan hemp industry to become strong, cash generating, safe, and really also open the eyes of many consumers out there that don't really have access to anything but hemp.
Make yeah, it makes sense. So, um, that's something that people truly don't really understand. I think in this industry, quick background on myself too. We are facing legal woes and legal issues in South Carolina. One of my stores was raided and my employees were charged with marijuana charges. And everything in our store had been prior tested and continuously tested. And, we had a raid and then testing was done. And in that testing procedure, they told us what we had was marijuana. So I think you and I are in very similar boats there. I myself, like you, wanted to get in this industry to help people and saw, immediately the vast benefits for our customers and these things were what they were doing for them. Um, but what I realized is when testing was done, that I would send multiple samples out to multiple different places and get multiple results for the same sample.
Hmm.
So, I realized that there's definitely some testing issues here. And
Hmm.
forgive me if I'm wrong, but currently the only real testing that the government requires is that it has to be a DEA approved lab. Is that the same thing in Nebraska or?
Yeah, DEA and ISO certified labs. Those are sort of the two accolades that testing labs have to have. Um, the DEA labs and the ISO certification, those are really, really good certifications for a lab to obtain. And it does give some credence to these labs. And
Sure,
it does show that they have established some good standard operating procedures and that they know how to handle controlled substances.
sure,
Um, the the issue with testing labs is that each lab, there's not really a unified methodology to test these products. Every lab has their own standard operating procedure on how they measure cannabinoids in a particular matrix. So it's not oftentimes it's not very uniform, and that's why when you send your samples out, you get all these different results, right?
sure.
And so also the other issue with the labs is they might be DEA certified, they might be ISO certified, and they might have all the bells and whistles that testing labs are proud of. But
Right,
they also might have different levels of instrumentation. You know what I mean? There's sometimes labs use one particular instrument called HPLC. Sometimes they use another instrument called GCMS. Sometimes they use what's called a tandem GCMS-MS. And then sometimes labs use both methods to really confirm. And then there's sometimes chemical derivatization methods that need to occur first before you inject the sample into the instrument to determine what it is. So this is the issue. There's not really a standardized, harmonized way across all testing labs of this is how we would like to have these matrices tested using
sure.
this instrumentation, this methodology, and then also there is no standardized way of reporting the results. All these
Wow.
certificates of analyses that come with these products, like one lab reports a completely different way than another, and then usually there's different degrees of what they call uncertainty measurements, where a degree of uncertainty comes into these measurements, so all that is different. So it's really difficult to compare any of these test results of any of these products, because we're not comparing apples with apples, we're comparing apples with oranges. So that's the issue right now, the lack of harmonization across the testing industry, lack of harmonization in reporting data, and lack of understanding the data.
Right.
You need highly qualified scientists that have been in this field for a long, long time to really fully comprehend what does this certificate of analysis actually mean. So just because some people get the COA, this is the shorthand that we use for certificate of analysis, they think
Sure.
like, oh yeah, it looks good because D9 is less than 0.3, yeah, all good. But then they don't look at all of the fine print, and what's the degree of uncertainty, and all of the notes, the lab notes that can come into play when there's unidentified things in the matrix. So this is the problem with the testing industry. It's a new field still. You know, we the I got my start in the marijuana testing industry, and back then we were testing for 9 cannabinoids. 9.
Right. Yeah.
Now we can test for like over 30, if not more. And so the technology needs to evolve, the instrumentation needs to evolve, scientific knowledge needs to evolve, competencies of the people who conduct these labs, all of that stuff is the reason why we're struggling.
Sure. And yeah, and you touched on that, and I think that's been kind of the argument too, sometimes with law enforcement and people in the industry is Well, I use a DEA certified lab or a certified
Mhm,
lab, but I try to explain to them there is no standard operating procedure. And it's wildly so too that some people's standard operating procedure involves a process called decarboxylation before
mhm,
testing. In your professional opinion, and for the layman people out there listening, decarboxylation is basically a fancy term for heating the sample
mhm.
before testing it. In your expertise, is this the proper way of testing, or does that ultimately create a new compound when you do decarboxylate?
It's very important that we use instrumentation that shows us all of the components that are in the matrix, which includes what we call the acidic components and the neutral components. The acidic components have this chemical group on them that, as you stated correctly, does get decarboxylated under certain conditions. So we need to use instrumentation that reports the acids as well as the neutral cannabinoids, because only then do we have a clear understanding of what the concentration is of each individual cannabinoid in that particular matrix. If we are using a method where a decarboxylation takes place prior to measuring, then all of the acidic compounds are losing that chemical group that's sensitive to heat, and then it converts into a decarboxylated cannabinoid, which in the case of THCA and delta 9 THCA, which then converts into delta 9 THC, could create an issue on a certificate of analysis of reporting higher than zero point 0.3. Whereas if the acid and the delta 9 was separated, then it would, accurately reflect what is in the matrix. And there are plenty of methods and operating procedures that allow these separations of these acids from these neutral compounds. And that's exactly what any kind of cannabis lab should be doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I too, I'm not new to the cannabis industry, but the testing portion has been a an Achilles heel for us since day one.
Mhm,
Um, you know, I also you talk about the marijuana industry. It seems like people shop labs for desired results, ultimately wanting
mhm,
higher THC content. And I think a
mhm,
lot of people in the
mhm,
hemp industry are shopping for lower THC content, Delta
mhm,
9 content. And
mhm,
you bring up a great point with like a database or something we could share comparison or offer something besides just a PDF or a printable
mhm,
page, something that can
mhm,
be tracked to make sure it hasn't been altered or
mhm,
changed or that the testing is consistent. It, you know, the gray area was kind of a cool place to be in the beginning because it allowed us to kind of spread our wings. But now there's very little protection in the gray area. And
mhm,
in our instance in South Carolina, they used an antiquated, old, outdated field test that ultimately just tests for THC. Period. Doesn't differentiate between THCA, V, 8, 9, 10, what have you. Um, in your professional experience, do you see that those tests are accurate at all, or are they as
So
outdated as they seem? No,
these
no,
these field tests, I'm assuming you're talking about the color changing tests that when you open a pouch, you put the substance in, you squeeze
correct.
it, then it changes color, and then it's indicative of the substance. And these tests are extremely unreliable, and they have the tendency to give false positives and false negative results. In
Wow,
fact, I published two major papers in some forensic journals exactly around these field tests and how notorious they are for false positives and false negatives, and how they shouldn't be used at all for any abused narcotic, because um, we have gotten so sophisticated in our testing methods with testing labs. We don't need to have field tests that we, also a color is a subjective measurement, right? Because what's green for you might not be so green for me. And then, then there's a cop who looks at, oh, yeah, this is green, therefore it's positive. Well,
Sure.
you can't really, everybody's vision is different. And to rely on a color test is just, it's just unprofessional, inadequate, and should be outlawed, actually.
Yeah, at times it feels like this is all by design. I feel like the flaws are purposely put in sometimes to generate that false positive.
Well,
Um,
and I wished I could, honestly, and it's not sometimes the cops' fault, because I did a lot of work on this where I tried to figure out what on earth is going on. Why are we using this? Oftentimes, the way how this works is that when the police officer gets trained on the job on how to do drug testing, that's the procedure. They use these field tests. And so they do what they're trained. And it's time for law enforcement to really, step up and figure out that these antiquated tests should be removed from the field. They should be removed because there have been too many false convictions, too many false arrests, and damaging people's lives. So the field test is a subject that we can't really use for hemp or marijuana. It'll always test positive
and
for
I've
hemp.
Yeah, and I've even been told in a lot of places they actually are not submissible in court or to be used as probable cause. Are you seeing that across the country as well,
Well,
or in Nebraska?
there's still a lot of lawsuits going on based on the results of these, tests, these field tests. I've actually served as, several on several cases as an expert witness on, how false testing procedures, false positives, how the chemistry that's happening in these pouches, um, is maybe fun for like a student. Oh yeah, look, I'm adding this and it turns green, but it's not so fun when, when you have detergent in the back of your car and you get stopped and then they test it and it turns a particular color and you get arrested and your car gets taken, and you lose your family because you're in jail. So all of that, it's not so funny then, but the
No.
chemistry that's occurring in these field tests is just not, cutting edge enough anymore for the sophistication of the amount of designer drugs that we have now on the streets. And in the cannabis space, we have so many different cannabinoids, and these field tests are not able to distinguish any of them.
And that's absolutely incredible. Even in your testing, in your controlled environment with your standard operating procedures, do you see any variances in testing the same samples in the same standard operating procedure?
Even that can happen, and that's why labs really have to, report what's called, uncertainty measurement, because they have to test themselves, how confident are they that the report that they provide to their customer, is within that confidence level. And most ISO and DEA labs report with what they call a 95% confidence level, which means that, um, and some labs don't have that high of a confidence level, but
Yeah,
oftentimes I
so
see
that seems
that.
pretty
Yeah,
high.
yeah. But it basically means when they report on a 95% confidence level, that they're 95% sure that the result that they're showing you is that result. But then there's still that 5% where other things can happen, and that 5% can get you in trouble really quickly if that 5% has to do with delta 9 THC.
Right. And you're absolutely right. We're talking about a 5% variance that can mean the difference between someone's freedom or someone
Mhm.
facing a 20-year charge like one of my employees.
Mhm.
We've seen $1 million in losses since January. I got an employee facing a 20-year charge that's ultimately upended her life and turned her life upside down.
Mhm.
And it's absolutely daunting. I've
Mhm.
spoke to other testing people and other professors and things in the past on this subject, and they seem that most things that are tested in most industries have like a standardized, like a factor, like something that you use as the sample to go off of. Does the cannabis
Mhm.
industry have anything like that, like a standard?
Yes, yes. Uh-huh. We do. I mean, the testing industry uses what's called standardized references, and
Okay.
these reference standards are used. and without them, you couldn't really make any kind of determination or a standard curve or anything like that. But each lab does use these reference standards. Now, the issue with reference standards is that even they have to be treated very, very carefully, because they can expire very quickly if they get exposed to any kind of light or heat. The cannabinoid content can change. It can go either up or can go down. Sometimes there's still not for every cannabinoid. Maybe there might not be a reference standard that has been certified. There might be reference standards out there, but they're not certified yet. So there's just there's a lot of catch up to do, because these novel cannabinoids that can be derived from hemp, that we're now really seeing this plethora of unique formulations of. Some of these references, it takes a long time to really produce a standard reference that can be certified and then be used in the lab so that they can make an accurate determination. And so oftentimes labs do measure it, but then they make a specific lab note about it, like this is a particular cannabinoid that we're reporting it, but it's not certified. So that's good. So this type of
Yeah.
transparency in labs is good, when they're open about the fact we're telling you this is the concentration, but this result is not a certified result.
Yeah, and I often seems too that there's a bit of conflict of interest with some of these labs too, especially ones that are used continuously by the same law enforcement. It almost seems like they're expected to get certain results, and it
Hmm.
seems like sometimes maybe the standard operating procedure changes to get certain results they're looking for. But forgive me, and if you don't want to answer this, is fine. You're facing something similar as well, um, personally, correct? If that, didn't you have
So,
something similar go down?
so yes, in the state of Nebraska, I have been working with very, very reputable business owners who um, who have done everything in their power to be completely professional and transparent, and really making sure that all the products that they were sourcing, that they were sourced with new certificates of analyses and all of that, and um, really doing due diligence on the manufacturers. And I have been involved with these business owners, with these particular businesses on many levels, because I believe in their philosophy and education. We're training the employees; they have to be certified. They by myself, experts in the field. They get weekly trainings, updates, meetings. We we these employees stay on top of their game and have to prove it to these business owners all the time. And we're this company is has been rated by the law enforcement, and it's unbelievable what I have discovered as a consequence of this raid. I have across the board discovered a lot of discrepancies when it comes to descriptions of products, when it comes to labeling of products, when it comes to the way how they're tested, it comes to the way how these certificates of analysis are being reported. I've a lot of shall we say, lack of transparency in terms of like, what is the certificate of analysis all about? Does it really pertaining to that particular product? Why? And so I've discovered a lot of things that since this raid that really makes me raise my eyebrows about the industry, and it really makes me fully aware of the fact that we have to fix these issues now,
Right.
because and it needs to be done with sensitivity, and it needs to be done with knowledge. We cannot just like outlaw everything and make everything non-compliant. We have to really look at every single situation and determine, what is a compliant product mean. It means this much delta 9 THC. How do we assure that these products are compliant? We have to use a procedure that accurately and reproducibly measures delta 9 THC, because that's all everybody ever cares about at this point.
Right.
Um, and then I think we need to really start licensing businesses that sell this stuff too. Reputable companies want to be stringent on their products. They want to follow the law. They want to have clients that they sell products to that come back over and over and over again because it helps them. It produces the effect that they were wanted. And this rate has caused these business owners tremendous financial loss of employees, loss of reputation. They were featured on various television channels. All of the equipment that was taken has to be replaced. That all costs a lot of money. All the confiscated products are, of course, now confiscated, but also they weren't the products are not restocked, and so that causes customers to saying, well, where's my product? Well, sorry, we don't sell it anymore. So that's also another financial hit. So good reputable hemp businesses are basically starting to see the consequences of the dysfunction of this whole industry not being totally traceable from seed to sale, lack of labeling consistencies, lack of reporting certificates of analysis consistencies, the whole fact that you were alluding to earlier, that some people just go to one particular lab because that they always get the same results that they want. That's just not right. We need
Sure.
to know what's really in the product.
Sure.
And then we need to put on the label what's really on the product. You
Right.
cannot
Exactly.
believe how many products I have looked at certificates of analysis having all this stuff on the label, and then I couldn't find a damn trace of it in the COA.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah.
so
Unbelievable.
it's
And all we can do
unbelievable.
is we can either laugh or cry about it, but you're absolutely right. And you know,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of bad players in the game, and I agree with you. I don't think any reputable company in this space would disagree with you that we greatly need regulation and
Hmm.
licensing, and fair licensing. And I've had that same argument with police officers and politicians and lawmakers that you can't make this illegal and make it go away. Making
Hmm.
it illegal only therefore makes it more dangerous, more
Hmm.
synthetic, more
Hmm.
underground, more black market,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
inherently more dangerous for the end user.
Hmm.
You and I and most people were talking about Delta 9 content. Something
Hmm.
that's important to talk about, the things that you aren't finding. What things are you finding that shouldn't be there? Pesticides, herbicides, microbials, molds, things like that. Are you finding that in a lot of your testing as well?
Interestingly enough, none of the certificates of analysis that I ever get from anybody that have this, what we call a full panel of testing, has any positives on microbials ever, or any of these kind of contaminants like pesticides or heavy metals. But what I've also noticed is that a lot of products don't get what is referred to as full panel testing because it costs a lot of money to do a full panel test on a product. So oftentimes you only get a full panel on, every once in a while you get a full panel.
Sure,
But most of the time you really only get um, what's called the cannabinoid profile, so the concentration of the cannabinoids, because even that for many businesses is an expensive test. And a lot of the hemp businesses that are like in retail, for example, it's hard for them to dish out a couple $100 for each product for testing. And but so the manufacturer of these products who really is the beneficiary of this industry, right? By selling all these products through
sure,
retail, they should be the ones responsible for providing full panel testing, um, for providing certificates of analysis that are absolutely transparent and can clearly differentiate between the acids and the neutral compounds and the THCAs and the THCs. That is on the burden of the manufacturer to do that due diligence, to then hand off the products to retail and dispensaries, that so that they can be assured, you know what, my manufacturer is the I can trust them. And that, I think there's a breakdown in a lot of that, where there's incomplete testing, um, you and then there's inconsistent testing, and then again labeling
Yeah,
also.
because ultimately it kind of feels like the Wild West. It's ultimately scary to see
Hmm.
what some people are selling out here and passing along as cannabinoid based products. And we
Hmm.
live in the we live in the world of fentanyl and other highly deadly, highly addictive, very dangerous products. And
Yes.
anybody and their brother right now can sell these products in any store, any setting. Most
Yeah.
states don't even have an age restriction of what you could
Yeah.
sell, and
Hmm.
it's inherently dangerous. And there's some bad players in the game, but for the most part, I think people want this. They want to do well.
Hmm.
They want to keep their customers safe, but there's definitely people out there that are just looking to make a dollar and could care less. Um, I imagine you have people that come to you for preliminary testing and then probably like a follow-up testing that you do often to compare results to something that's already been tested. Off the
Well,
cuff, how often would you say that the preliminary, the initial test is accurate when you're retesting something that's already been tested?
I would say more often than not, a retest shows a different result.
I imagine that so too. And
Yeah.
without getting too far in it, the people that are facing these issues in Nebraska, has that been resolved or is that an ongoing case?
No, in fact, they're in danger of facing criminal charges.
Wow.
So their lives are deeply affected. I mean, there's trauma, psychological trauma. In one instance, even physical trauma. Uh, I mean, it's just devastating, devastating.
And
Um,
ultimately, we're talking about people that were excited to get in this industry from the 2018 Farm Bill,
yeah,
that probably put up most of their money, life savings, and
yeah,
things to get into a viable industry. And
yeah.
we're talking about humans, Americans that want to wake up, work hard, provide for their family. They're not trying to screw people over. They're not trying to hurt anyone. And like ourselves, in our instance, we buy only from USDA certified farmers. We have everything tested before we get it, and then we test it after we get it. We
Hmm.
too went through every loophole and every hurdle and every jump you could go through to make sure we're in complete compliance. And
Hmm.
again, I have an employee facing 20-year charges. She's a single
Hmm.
mom of three, and she can't even chaperone her kids right now on school trips and field trips because she has
Hmm.
pending charges. She can't get any secondary jobs or things because she has these pending charges. It's really uprooted her life since January, and all of ours as well. We've seen probably $1 million to $1.5 million in losses that we can account for. And again, we were too drugged through the media, made to look horrendous, made us look like we were low level black market drug dealers when
Hmm.
ultimately we did everything by the book. We did
Hmm.
everything by the law set before us and we're told to go by, and we still
Hmm.
got burned for it. And I don't think you or I or a lot of people in this industry across the United States are alone in this. And
Hmm.
I think it's a true issue, like a pandemic type issue where I think a lot of these law enforcement are just charging us, and it's ultimately up to us the burden of proof. It's almost like we're guilty until proven innocent, and all of that costs money and things. And most of the time, even if you do survive it, your brand has got such a hard hit. Media is so quick to report on the bad part. They rarely do a follow-up report of, hey, by the way, this was all false. They
Hmm.
really didn't do these things we accused them
No,
of. So it's a
no,
true problem.
it's a tragedy. Yes, it is.
I tried to, and
Especially when you're affecting, you know, people that went into this industry with the right intentions.
sure.
And so it's definitely heartbreaking. So I also recognize because of my training as an organic chemist and having synthesized many cannabinoids in my life, semi-synthetic, full synthetics, everything. I also recognize that the Delta 8 THC industry that's flourishing right now, that, you know, it's just really difficult from a chemistry perspective to really make that Delta 8 hemp derived product fully compliant. And in order to make that fully compliant, it takes some extra work. And so whoever is manufacturing these products would undergo additional process in order to remove any non-compliant beings Delta 9 THC. And what happens is that oftentimes that hot material enters into these products and then end up ultimately testing hot. So it's really, I am encouraged and I want to encourage an industry where all of the hemp producers, hemp product producers, produce compliant product. And even if that means that the margins, the financial margins have to be lowered so that they can provide compliance, that is my urge for the industry. Every manufacturer must provide compliant product, and it needs to be proven by testing procedures that can actually
Or
differentiate
standardized
all of
across
the
the
products.
board.
Yeah.
Now, forgive me if I'm wrong, but you also have deep roots overseas as well in the European cannabis industry as well. Um,
Mhm.
what other places across the globe do you have involvement in this industry?
So in Germany, I was part of a company where I put together a cannabis company that produces a cannabidiol isolate as an API, as an approved pharmaceutical ingredient.
Well,
So that is a completely different ball game to get a
yeah,
facility put together that's under, it's going to be running under pharmaceutical conditions. So I had a lot of fun doing that, and that company is
sounds like
still on track with like becoming one of the best European API suppliers of CBD as an isolate. I've also helped once Thailand started going when they went legal with hemp. I started helping a couple of entrepreneurs in Thailand put their facility together. And then I am also educated with with one of my business partners. I educated several hundred physicians in Brazil, because when they went legal, they didn't know anything about any of this stuff. And so me and my business partner, we basically gave a 2-day full-blown educational seminar where all of these doctors learned about cannabinoids, the applications, different diseases that can be treated, different demographics that can be approached. So I've had
totally.
my hands in a lot of different areas.
So, what would you say the approach in Europe and Asia is to cannabis versus the United States? I guess they're probably more in the infant stages versus us, or they more advanced?
10 years behind at
Oh wow,
least. Yeah, I mean,
incredible.
honestly, it's still a hurdle to really even make people understand what I mean. Even the fact CBD, you know what I mean, even that is
Sure.
still in its infancy in Europe and in Asia. So they're 10 years behind when it comes to these innovative formulations that we're putting on the market in the US.
And it seems like to me that Israel was kind of the leading group of people that did the
Mhm.
most research in this. Are you seeing that as well?
Yes, I mean, Israel is extremely progressive. You know, we have the godfather of cannabis there, Dr. Meshulam, of course,
Yep,
who discovered all of this and was part of the discovery of the endocannabinoid system. And he did all of this groundbreaking work and basically set the path forward into modern investigations and technology into this field. So Israel is definitely a wonderful, wonderful country that's way ahead of the ball game, that's
Incredible.
very tolerant and progressive, and just
Yeah.
really, really
And that's
great.
what I try to explain to people. I mean, you talk about the discovery of the endocannabinoid system. I don't think was what till 1997,
Yes,
and
that's correct.
then we really we did not deschedule cannabis or hemp until the 2018 Farm Bill, which it was
Hmm.
still under a Controlled Substance Act of Schedule 1, meaning that
Hmm.
no testing could be done unless, I believe it
Yeah.
was what, Ole Miss and Alabama was the only college, I believe, that was granted the federal grant to do any testing. So we're really talking about infant stages here too. I mean, since
Yes.
2018, we weren't even allowed to do the
Yeah,
testing.
that's
So,
true.
and it's just incredible. I like to ask this too. To your knowledge, do you know of anyone that has ever died directly from use of cannabis? Because I've done a lot of research and I honestly cannot find anyone. And um,
I honestly, I don't want to exclude it,
sure,
but it's not something that comes across my desk all the time.
sure, sure,
But I have heard some incidents where these things are cited sometimes, especially in political agendas, when there's like anti cannabis political speeches going on. Oftentimes
sure.
these incidences are mentioned. I myself have not known of anybody or heard of anybody, and especially especially on the hemp side, there it's a pretty safe. CBD has a pretty good safety profile. We've shown that. I guess depending on what agency you would ask, they might disagree with me.
Right,
if
sure.
you ask the DEA, FDA, USDA, everybody has a different opinion on safety of cannabinoids.
And you bring up a good point there. To anyone watching this, we're always looking for information. We're always looking for viable, knowledgeable, non-biased, real information. In your expert opinion, where could anyone watching this go to find out what is probably the most factual, fact-based research or knowledge on this plant? Where could one find that, or what resource do you trust the most for your information?
Difficult.
Yeah,
Um,
I wonder
I
that
miss,
too.
like to me, I mean, I'm the kind, I scrutinize everything I read, right?
Myself as
And
well. Yeah,
and I, as a professor and a scholar, I usually lean heavily on peer-reviewed journal articles that have an impact factor of meaning, not just a journal that anybody can just pay $2,000 to and get published. Like
right,
something with an impact factor that has credibility, and and I look at journals, peer-reviewed journals, very critically as well, because not all of them are the golden egg either. But I lean heavily on peer-reviewed journal articles, and I also lean very heavily on clinical trials. Um, and um, and and then there's also different levels of clinical trials. Some of them I would consider done very well, and some of them I consider done not very well. And then the results sometimes are being presented in a way that I don't fully agree with. So I'm very critical when it comes to sourcing good information.
sure.
Um, but like I said, as a professor, I heavily rely on peer-reviewed journal articles and um,
Because
and
ultimately,
clinical
if you
trials.
go in any testing with an agenda, you can use data or testing points to push things if you're trying to be biased or to sway something or to prove
Hmm.
something in someone's favor.
Hmm.
Um, this is all incredible information. Is for the folks watching too, is there anywhere anyone can go find your life's work, anything that you've published? Um, if people want to have you do their testing or anything like that, are you open to the public? Do you help other people? Where can folks find your work or find you?
So I don't have my own testing facility. I opened one a couple of years ago, and then and then I kind of went moved on. But I am working with highly reputable labs that I fully trust and have vetted myself, um,
Sure.
on multiple tricks. I tested them using my multiple tricks, and just to really do due diligence on testing labs. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I mean, honestly, it's easy to find me on Google. My email is plastered all over the place. LinkedIn, you can contact me through there. I'm there too. And I know the labs that I trust, that I've personally vetted. I can get anybody who wants to get their products tested. I can help facilitate um, good testing lab conversations. And then my LinkedIn page speaks a lot, and Google helps with finding what I have published. I've published
Right.
several articles on minor cannabinoids and how the pharmacology works on these minor cannabinoids with these receptors in the endocannabinoid system, psychotropic substances versus non-psychotropic substances. And in fact, next month, I'm going to publish an article on restorative sleep
Oh,
using
wow.
CBD, full
Incredible.
spectrum CBD. And this is going to be published in a magazine for chiropractors, because a lot of athletes go to chiropractors, and athletes sometimes have um, not the correct understanding of what they should be doing to get restorative sleep so that they can perform and have ultimate performance parameters met. So I'm going to have a little article there that's coming out next month. And I published a couple of articles in business focus magazines when I was doing the German CBD API facility. Yeah, so online you can find a lot.
That's amazing. I unfortunately did not have time to do my homework, but I do plan on going and reading up on your work. And I believe we might be calling on you too as a subject matter expert and some legal things we have going on as well. So, um, with with all that being said, you mentioned CBD, and this is kind of an ongoing debate I've heard from different people. In your opinion, what is the correct dosage for cannabidiol CBD tincture, or is a tincture the best way to take it? And does it
Mhm.
vary as much as I think per individual?
Oh, unfortunately, it varies a lot per individual, and I wished I could give you a cut dry answer, just like, hey, for ibuprofen, take 2 pills, 200 milligrams, and done. No, we can't. I can't give you this answer.
Sure.
I always like to say you got to go low and go slow and go low,
Right.
and then find that optimal
Titrate
spot
slowly.
on that curve until the CBD dosage you is right for you, because not everybody is the same. And the endocannabinoid system, we're talking about the central nervous system. We're talking
Sure.
about neurotransmitters, we're talking about receptors, and it, it's just not the same. We just don't have that information available, and everybody can
Amazing.
react totally differently, unfortunately.
So are you solely cannabinoids, or are you going to get into other compounds such as psilocybin, which is a topic, hot button right now,
Mhm.
psychedelics, LSD, things like that, DMT, different things out there. Does any of that interest you, or any of your
Oh
work be in
yeah,
those areas as well?
oh yeah. I developed a whole course around psychedelic compounds, plant-derived synthetic or semi-synthetic. I'm very interested in that area of research, in that I'm interested in using it for treatment. I'm recreationally, medically. It's the next frontier.
Right, for
It's
sure.
definitely the next frontier.
And personally, I've seen incredible results from folks coming anxiety, depression, PTSD. So I
Hmm.
look forward to that, and hopefully you and I can keep in touch and uh, work together in any kind of way. If I can help you in any kind of way with your work, or vice versa, we will be
Thank you.
opening a facility in Virginia that is going to be geared towards like a resort geared towards these plant wellness. So I
Okay.
would love to have you come there eventually as well, and maybe we could do a seminar or a weekend with people looking to to get well with plant materials and what the earth provides. But either
Oh,
way,
that's amazing.
yes, absolutely. We're gonna wrap it up here. Is there anything you want to add or let the people know? And again, they can find you, Dr. Andrea Holmes. They can Google you, find you on LinkedIn. What's the
Hmm.
parting message for my viewers here?
The parting message is I urge your viewers to pay attention, to educate themselves, to look at if your viewers or listeners, if they're people who consume cannabinoids, they need to do their due diligence to where they buy the cannabinoids from, what kind of documentation, and what kind of sales staff, and are they trained? Do they know what they're talking about, or do they just talk a bunch of BS? I think
Absolutely.
professionalism is important. We must professionalize the industry. We need to bring credentialed scientists to the table that can talk the talk and walk the walk and understand these very complex issues that are going on right now. Decisions need to be made on the regulatory front, by the FDA, by the Farm Bill. We need to look at, we need to make sure the industry flourishes and continue to flourish. We cannot outlaw things because it's already here. Like you said, it's going to make it worse if we're outlawing. We just have to do it smartly and intelligently and sensibly.
Yeah, I was reading an article today that the hemp industry already dwarfs the adult use marijuana industry almost 3 to 1, I believe. So
Wow.
it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and whether you want to make it legal or not, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. And
Yeah.
making it legal, like we said, is only going to make it more dangerous. Also,
Yes.
one of our viewers, Randy's been commenting this whole time. Randy, I want to thank you for joining and talking, and thank you for joining us there. But Dr. Andrea Holmes, I really can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule and day. I'm sure you're going to have folks reach out to you from this. There's a lot of people out there that need help. From the few podcasts I've done, I've heard calls from all over the country of people in the same exact instance that we are, that are facing challenges to keep their freedom and keep their business open over something that they were told is completely legal. So I can't thank you enough for your life's work. We need more people like you, and I can't thank you enough for everything you do. And
Thank you.
hopefully, this isn't our last conversation. And hopefully, soon you and I can celebrate regulatory changes in this industry that helps us all flourish. And
Thank you.
you got a friend in me. If you ever need anything, please call on me. And
Okay.
I really appreciate your time. And I hope you have an amazing day. And we will win this. And we're on the right side of history. And we're going to help more people than we know. So thank you again for your
Amazing.
time, and I really appreciate
Okay.
you. And thank you to all my viewers. Please tune in, subscribe, and like our channel. Follow us on letsbeblunt.org, and we'll be back soon. Thanks so much, Doctor.
Yep. Bye bye.